prevails. Seymour Business comes home to win his 11th race.
Autostar lights up Pipton, and Autostar wins the King George.
Steeplechase over Lifetime. Autostar is in front. Long runs closing, but Autostar has done it. He's won 5 King Georges.
It is going to be a record 8th win in the King George for trainer Paul Nicholls as Silviniaco Conti wins the King George.
And it's a second King George for Clanders Ovo under Sanderson Davis, and number 11 for trainer Paul Nicholls.
Rodon is out in front for his biggest prize of all. Rodon has taken the King George. Bravemansgame to give Paul Nicholls a record 13th win in the King George.
Yeah, and that horse will bid to follow up again this year and try and give Paul the Mantle a 14th win in the King George. But we'll get there. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good for me. You?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for coming in. I was in yesterday watching, and every time you have someone coming in the next day, you think, I just hope they have a winner. Let alone, I hope they don't get beaten a short head in the big race. But there we are. It was. I mean, I guess you were watching yesterday thinking what might have been, but it was some good racing.
Oh, it was good racing. Look, we've had a good few weeks and won plenty of good races, and just yesterday was a short head away from winning another one. It was, I think, probably ran a career best. He's improving, and you get beat your short head. It's frustrating, but at least he's run very, very well.
So the other thing I was doing yesterday is just going through your history and your stats, and the one thing that really struck me, well, there can't be many people that, all bar 1 year where you've run more than 400 horses, you've had a 20% strike rate or more. You've basically, as far as the figures would say, never had a bad year. You might feel you have, but you haven't really. And with everything that goes around, bugs and sickness and quality of horses, turnover of horses, how have you done that?
Just try and be consistent, really. Have a good team around you. You know, headed up my head left, Clifford. We all work hard and make sure everything's right. And you can have a few indifferent years because what you've got in your squad, really, in the horses. But we've always tried to, Clifford and I always try and set a benchmark of about 25% strike rate throughout the seasons. And we've not been far off that most years. Last year, we were not far off 30 most of the season. Dropped off a bit towards the end. But I think at the moment we're 25 or 26%. If we can keep doing that, we'd be well happy.
I think I know what you're going to say now, but if you could pick out, do you know what your best year on the numbers is? So winners, prize money and strike rate, if you look at those 3 metrics, do you know which the best is?
No, not in detail, no. I know, I think 1 year we had, I think probably up to close 170 winners. And 1 year not far off 4 million in prize money.
Because if you'd have asked me before I had a look, I'd have gone, well, it's got to be the Gold Cup year. It's got to be 07, 08, 09. Last year.
Yeah. Well, there we are.
Last year. And yet I don't think people would necessarily say that.
No, that's right. And that's without winning all those super races, winning all those good horses. So we're consistently good across the board last year with the horses. And at the end of the day, you've got to get the best out of everything you've got in your team. And obviously last year was a good year.
Tell me about Clifford then. How long's he been with you?
27, 28 years. You know, he'd been with David Nicholson before then, and he moved down, and you know, we've just had a great relationship since. He works hard. He's like me. He eats and sleeps it. And yeah, you need someone like that behind you. And as long as we're both fit and healthy, we're going to keep going.
What is it about that relationship which works so well, and clearly is so important to the success of the operation?
Just complete faith and trust in him, and just let him get on with his job. I mean, I've always been one really to delegate. You can't do it all. That's what I think Paul Barber always said to me. I remember saying, young man, you've got to delegate, remember that. And it's very true, you can't do it all, you have to be prepared to let people get on with it. Clifford does a fantastic job. Yeah, surround, we've got some good, Charlie Davis, Natalie Parker, Andrew Glastonbury, Dave runs our yard at Highbridge. You have to have good people around you.
But when there's so much at stake, it must be hard to delegate and have ultimate faith in so many different people. Because because there is a huge amount at stake. But like you say, there's not enough time in the day to do everything. Were you good at delegation from day one, or have you learnt?
I've learnt along the ways. You do. I mean, I've been training 32 years, so you learn every season. You never stop learning. But yeah, when you start off, and ultimately you want to do everything. You think you can do everything, but you can't. And I had a wise man above me then in Paul, always pointing me in the right direction, telling me where I was going wrong and where I should do things differently. And Paul obviously had a big influence on the way I run my business and my life, really. But yeah, you have to have faith in people around you and give them a chance, and it all gels together then. And
how different would it be now to, well, even, I guess, say, 25 years ago, where you were really starting to hit the top? The process of training a horse. Maybe it's exactly the same, training a horse, but the environment we're in. How different do you feel it is now, and how have you enabled yourself and the team to sort of stay current?
You're forever changing. You're forever learning, and never be prepared to listen to everybody involved. But now really we've got the ultimate setup now, with all the facilities we've invested in and got. Good staff, good owners. Obviously, that's very, very important. And decent horses, and there's loads of crumbs to make a cake, and your experience over the years helps you glue all that together, and hopefully that's why Clifford and I always make the right decision, to try and make the right decision and keep it all going the right way.
Was there ever a point where you thought could be in trouble there this year, or we're not looking too strong, or do you go into every season worried?
No, sometimes you do think that, you get, and it's a remarkable how along the way horses pop up and come along, and I always remember our Corto and all those good horses, Mastermind and Neptune and Denman, it all finished like, where are we going to go now? We're going to be in trouble. And then Silvanaco Conti popped up and won 2 King Georges, as you showed earlier on. And then Clan des Abo came along, and they seem to keep, cropping up. And then we've invested a lot of time and money in the last few years in buying 3-year-olds and bringing them through the system. And Stage Star's a great example of that. He started off in his bumper at Chepstone, where he is now, and bringing those horses along that way. So we've always got a production line now of nice horses to come on through, and I hope we've got lovely horses for the next few years.
So I think there's a perception, I might be completely wrong, and maybe it's just me, that those horses that you mentioned, the Contis and the other King George winners you had, were still sort of the stable stars in some quieter years for you.
They were,
And yet, on the numbers, they weren't necessarily. But don't you feel that the jumping game at the moment is, unless you're firing out Cheltenham winners, you're not really hitting the heights? Now, the way you approach the game might feel very differently to that, but I feel there is that perception in the jump racing game anyway.
Well, there might be that perception, but I don't see it like that at all, obviously. I mean, we were lucky last year we had a couple of Cheltenham winners, but without the Cheltenham winners, we'd probably still won the championship. And good prize money. There's a lot of good races out there to be won all around Cheltenham. Cheltenham's not the be-all and end-all of everything. Of course, we all want to have Cheltenham winners. Everybody does. Every owner, everyone aspires to have winners at Cheltenham. But there's some fantastic races throughout the season. It's not just about 1 week of the season. For me, I've always thought that. We want to have winners all year round.
Has there been, maybe it's at Cheltenham, maybe it's elsewhere, has there been sort of one horse, maybe the obvious one, maybe away, that has given you such a sense of satisfaction as to what you have been able to achieve with him or her?
I mean, I would have said Cordo Star is one of the top ones, but those, the longevity of those horses, you think he won all those races, and he was still able to win a Betfair chase, I think, for the 4th time, and a King George for the 5th time when he was 11 years old, and won a novice chase at Newbury when he was a 4-year-old. So just the longevity of those good horses, and Denman was another, was still running when he was 12 and 13. That gives me an awful lot of pleasure to. So
compare I'm just indulging myself into when I guess sort of really fell in love with it, but compare a Denman winning a second Hennessy, as it was then, with Corto winning a first Gold Cup. Are they sort of not comparable because it's Corto winning a Gold Cup for the first time, or is there something about Denman and that weight carrying performance which I know we in the public also buy into, that gives you a huge amount of satisfaction?
They were just great days with all those horses. What have they ever achieved? They're very special. I think with Corto, the second Gold Cup was, he was the first horse to lose and come back and then win the Gold Cup. That was special. And when he won a 5th King George, which would be hard to, I think, to beat, that was special. But, he said when Denman won, you can pick up big bucks, masterminded. When he won the Championships as a 5-year-old, that was probably a fantastic day. They're all great days, and very lucky to have had those horses to be able to do it.
How did you arrive at that point where you had all those good horses?
Well, I think they find you. We got very lucky. Anthony Bromley was sourcing a lot of them. And there weren't too many people at that time sort of buying the French horses like there is now. There's a small amount of people and had the right owners to buy them at the right time. And yeah, a lot of ways you got lucky. But I think those good horses tend to find you a little bit. And obviously we're very lucky at one time to have all those.
The other thing that was slightly lost on me about that period, looking at Ruby's, where he was riding and the numbers of winners he was riding, between Britain and Ireland at that time, he was still riding 200-plus winners. How did, between the two of you, I can't really think about how you managed it, but how was it worked, what he was going to ride where? Was it a case of he'll ride for you when you ask at the time? Yeah. Or would you have always said, you know, the sort of Hurricane Flies of this world or whatever, he could definitely ride those? Was there a sort of unwritten rule between the two of you?
Yeah, it was a gentleman's agreement we had, and we made it work. And at the time, most of the big races in Ireland were on a Sunday, was in the UK, it was on a Saturday, so that suited quite well. And yeah, it just worked, and you know there was no point bringing him over to Plumpton on a Monday for one that had no chance. But if he had one that I said would win at Plumpton on Monday, he'd be there. So we just worked together.
And when it came to the festival, it was sort of it was a bit harder, or? Well,
Willie wasn't quite so strong back in those days as he is now. Obviously, it would have been an impossible situation now. But at that time, you know, if he thought strongly about one that would win. For someone else, for Willie in particular, he'd ride it, and he always chose the best. And when it came to those championship days at the festival, he chose what he wanted to ride.
Do you remember your first Trainers' Championship?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, a long time ago. Was it 2006? I think.
What was the sort of scene like then in the trainers' world? Because I'm asking because I sort of just about missed Martin Pipe personally, and you were the top of the tree when I sort of really fell for the sport. So what was the scene like a couple of years before that when you were really on the up? Was there a fierce rivalry between the two?
Yeah, there was. Of course, there was. I mean, that's the same in any sport. It got a little bit intense really towards that first year we won it because we were running horses all around the country, and I think Martin got a bit stick for running quite a lot up north and come back and run at Sandown. And you know, he was a determined man and he wasn't going to be beat. And, it did get a bit intense. But I think I've been second in the championship to him for 4 or 5 seasons on the trot, and he was always going to be a hard man to beat. But eventually we cracked it in 2006 and never really looked back since then. And Martin retired then, and I think David took over shortly afterwards. So then it was a completely new thing, you know.
What did you think when he retired?
Well, I think it shocked everybody because he retired on the morning of the last day of the season at Sandown. But yeah, I can see his point in retiring at the top. And there was that fierce rivalry then. But to be honest, we get on great now. And I have to say, when I got my OB a couple of years ago, he wrote me the most wonderful letter. And if I see him at the races, we'll have a good chat. And there's no harm in rivalry in any sport. You see it, but. Seems to be in racing sometimes it's frowned upon, but in football and other sports there is rivalry, but it's good that you can shake hands afterwards and move on.
Isn't it great for the sport though? Yeah. So you talk about those football moments, some of those, you know, Wenger-Ferguson moments on the touchline and the Tuchel-Conte handshake recently. Where I often think we lack a bit.
Well, I agree entirely. And you've got to show passion. You all work hard. You put a lot into it. And end of the day, you want to win. That's why you're doing it. And the same with all those people you mentioned. Especially Alec. I mean, he was a fiercely competitive man. And there's no harm in that as long as you can shake hands afterwards and move on, and it's good.
So coming back to this year. How would you assess, obviously off the back of a couple of top-level novice wins at the Cheltenham Festival, how would you say the yard stacks up between the novices and the older horses this year and compared to, say, the last 5 years? Are you as strong as you've been?
I think we got some wonderful novice chasers coming through and novice hurdlers and the top end. I mean, we've got a good team, and I think we can only get stronger in the next few years with some of the horses coming on through, especially the younger horses. But the novice chasers this year have been really good. Stay Away Fame, Nappers Hill, Hermes Allen, Ginny's Destiny's not far behind them. And it's nice to have those horses that will be the future, really.
So what have we got? The next big novice chase will be the Corto Star.
Yeah. I was going to run Nappers Hill in that. Sadly, Nappers Hill's had a little setback, and we might end up missing the rest of the season with him. It's only minor, but if it's minor, you still got. And you know, I'd see him possibly being a horse that could run in the King George next year. So we think we need to stop and get him right. So I'm going to reroute Hermes Allen to the Quarter Star now, rather than go to Ascot this week, because I'd love to run him in a Grade 1, especially over 3 miles. So, you know, you play your cards and try and keep them all apart, and then you get something like this happen. So Hermes will almost certainly go to Kempton on Boxing Day.
So on Hermes Allen, there have been comparisons made to the likes, well, not ability-wise, but how you've campaigned him. The likes of, say, a Denman and your other Challow winner for the obvious
Bravemansgame.
Yeah, Bravemans, of course, who've then gone on to make it into top level staying chasers, who actually didn't win their novice hurdle at the festival, like Hermes Allen didn't. Is he in that mould or not quite? Because physically, when I remember when I first saw him, he didn't necessarily strike me as that.
Oh, we'll know after Kempton, won't we?
We will.
No, he's not. I mean, him and Stay Away Fade, particularly the same type of models, not big, massive, big Denman type horses. They're proper athletic racehorses, not the biggest in the world. They both got jumping ability, and they're good. And Hermes, had a good season. He won the Challow, and then sort of tailed off a bit in the sprint. But he was just struggling with his breathing. He did all season, actually. Funny enough, first time we ever ran him at Stratford, I ran him on fast ground because I thought he might struggle with a tongue tie on, but he just kept on going. So he sorted his breathing out in the summer. Had a little setback, nothing minor, like a foot infection, and so he went into Newbury a bit short, really. But he's taken good steps forward since then, and I'll be really interested in seeing him over 3 miles at Kempton, because I think that track will suit him well.
What's your gut feeling about the trip, not just at Kempton, but for the rest of the season?
He's got enough boot to win over 2.5, 260 sort of Newbury, but I'm sure he'll get 3 miles, and he's won a point to point. He looks a stayer. I mean, you win a Challow hurdle, to me, you're a stayer. So I don't see a trip being a problem. I would have said 3. He's like almost mirrors Bravemansgame in it. Kempton will probably be the ultimate track for him in a lot of ways. Whether he get 3.25 miles at Cheltenham, who knows? But
I love the fact with Bravemansgame you basically called it from his debut winning King George.
Yeah.
I think it was Harry Derham that said that. Was it Exeter?
We always thought of that. We thought he was, exactly, won a novice hurdle at Exeter, and we thought this could be a King George horse. Sometimes you can have a dream, but you've got to look forward a bit. And he was always going to be a chaser. Whatever he did over hurdles was going to be, ideal. But those horses take a huge step forward if they jump when they go chasing.
Obviously, we're not far out from a King George, and we went with a King George opener. What differentiates a King George horse from a Gold Cup horse, and what does a horse have to win both? That perhaps not every King George winner you've had has won a Gold Cup.
No, Courto had everything, didn't he? I mean, he could win, 2.5 Kempton Gold Cups. Silvanaco Conti and Clanders Abode could win a King George. Both of them won 2 King Georges, and hated Cheltenham, couldn't operate at Cheltenham. Denman would have got lapped in a King George, for example, but Cheltenham suited him well. He was an out-and-out class, true stayer. And I do think for a Gold Cup, you really need a real strong stayer. I think the first year, funny enough, Courto won the Gold Cup. The second year, he had a slightly not quite so good season. It almost took him a year to get over that first season. I don't think he was quite as good when Denman beat him as he was the year before. And at Bravemansgame was a little bit like that. I think they had a hard, because they're not probably real strong stout stayers. They had a real tough race in the Gold Cup and then punches down. And it's just taken them a little while to get back to where we want. And as I said to you earlier, I think Saturday is the first time I've seen him work right back to his best.
This is Bravemansgame.
Yeah. And I just think, thinking about and looking back, probably Cheltenham and punches would just bottom them a little bit, and that'd just take a little while to get over that. I
take it you were more disappointed with last time than his reappearance in the China.
Oh, no, I think he ran OK the last time. Probably 3, 1.5. He got outstayed. He ran OK, and Darrell sort of minded him. And it was probably quick enough after Wetherby. We couldn't do too much between those 2 races, and it was a very valuable race. There's only 4 runners. You have got to run in those races, really. But he's come out of that really well, and as I said, Saturday morning he worked, I would say, right back to his best. He looks really sharp again now, and Kempton suits him very well. It's 3 miles, not 3.25, and I'd say he'll run very well. What I've seen of him the last couple of weeks.
How many? Would it just be him?
And Frodon.
Frodon will go as well.
Yeah, Frodon runs as well. Yeah, I mean, where'd you go with him? He's a hard. He loves Kempton. He'll run a good, solid race again, and so he'll run as well.
You just reminded me of something when you talked about Courto, which was obviously the season that you just obviously had such a huge amount of fun with him. You went Better Fair Chase, then you went Go on Tingle Creek, then you went King George. Would you ever do that again?
You'd have to have the right horse to do that. And they're probably, I always said Coulter was a horse of a lifetime, so probably on that, probably not. And you've got to be a very exceptional horse to do that.
You don't think the game is different now, or you're not different now? You would only do it with the right type of horse?
Yeah, it'd have to be. I mean, literally, there's no point turning up in a Tingle Creek with horses going to go and get lapped. You need to have, you want to be going into those races to win, and he just had it all. I mean, he had so much speed. I mean, he Mastermind is a quick horse, probably had it as a 2-miler. He'd work with him any day he wanted, but he also had that ability to stay 3 1/4 miles. But I think both times he did win a Gold Cup over that trip, it did leave a little bit of. It took a while to get over it, and that's what I said. I was thinking about the other day with Bravemansgame. It's just perhaps he just hasn't quite yet been back to his best, and hopefully we're getting close to that again now.
Oh, you mentioned Harry Cobden. There's obviously something about your relationship which works ever so well. I don't know what it is. Don't know Harry hugely well. He always comes across as a very nice, down-to-earth, mild-mannered chap. But you and he seem to have, from day one, got off on the right foot.
Yeah, it's not unlike the relationship I had with Ruby, to be honest with you. We had 14 to 15 years and it worked well, and Harry's doing the same. He's going the right way. And, I think he's only 24, I think he's 24, isn't it? He's 25. But, a young man who's learning all the time. He's getting better all the time. And, yeah, we get on really well, and if we have the odd crossword, it's forgotten the next day. He has his opinion, I've got my opinion, and we don't clash very often. And I make mistakes, he makes the odd mistake, but the thing is not to make too many mistakes. And he's just getting better and better.
Do you like a rider who can push back a bit? Is that important to you or not?
Yeah, it is. It's a very important part of your team. You have to be able to, get on with your stable jockey. They have to get on with all your staff and your owners and everybody, make it a really happy ship and to be riding well. But like now, he's become one of the best jockeys riding. I've got no doubt about that. And a couple of his rides, Ginny's Destiny on Friday was out the top draw. A horse who probably was fairly unexposed, really, who's through Harry taken every big step forward and got confident in his jumping and confident in the way he runs. And those rides like that, to me, stand out as how good he is. So
when you started with Harry, when he first became stable jockey, did you see him as someone? It was obviously not going to be the finished article, no. But someone who needed to improve for there to be longevity. Did he have to?
Yeah, it was a big shout at the time because he was doing really well, and Colin Tizard was very keen to have him as stable jockey there, and I didn't want him going anywhere. It's like I always joked, if it was a football sort of scenario, I could have let him go on a free loan for 2 years, as long as I could have had him back. But that was never going to work, and it was probably a year too soon. And Sam Twiston Davis, who I've got the most respect for, is a fantastic man and jockey, was riding for us, and I'm thinking, I'm in trouble here, I've got to do something. And Paul Babb was always square behind me, and Harry is really a relation of the Barber. He's the Barber family, and Paul was always quite keen to have Harry as stable jockey. And he always kept saying to me, you've got to invest in the future, really, and if it takes a couple of years and it's not quite right. And but Sam was doing really well. It's a tough decision. And I remember talking to Alex Ferguson about it. He's always a great help to me if I've got, he always says, never be afraid of tough decisions. You've got to make them. Some people can't, but you have to make tough decisions. And he was right. And it was a tough day. I had to say to Sam that sorry, but I'm taking on Harry as number one. You'll always get chances for us when you can. And he's ridden King George winners since then. And it was a tough decision at the time, but it was an investment for the future, and it's the best thing we ever did. Because
I think we always think if you part ways with the jockey, you've had a fallout.
Yeah.
Oh, you must have had a huge fallout, and your hand's been forced.
That's always a perception, really. And Darryl and I parted company at one time. I had a lot of the time you get your owners load the gun and you pull the trigger. But Darryl and I are great mates, and it was great to see him ride Bravemansgame the other day. And he comes in and rides out once a week, and there's no point falling out. You have to make tough decisions. It probably doesn't suit everybody at the time, and everyone frowns about it. And you're in the firing line, but you've just got to try and do what's right, and try and then, as I said, it's great that I can be friends with Darryl and Sam and those guys.
Good stuff. Paul is not going anywhere. He's sticking around, and when you rejoin us, we're going to be looking back at some excellent racing yesterday at Cheltenham.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.